today, we're diving headfirst into a year so catastrophically awful, so relentlessly bleak, that it makes 2020 look like a blissful spa retreat. What if I told you there was a single year in history when the sky turned dark for months, crops failed globally, a terrifying plague swept continents, and even the very concept of summer simply vanished? A year where starvation was rampant, empires trembled, and hope itself seemed to curl up and die in a corner. You might be thinking, surely you exaggerate, odd historian. No single year could be that bad. Oh, but my dear friends, history, in its infinite and often cruel wisdom, has a way of outdoing even our darkest imaginations. We're not talking about a bad year for your local sports team or even a rough decade. We're talking about the undisputed heavyweight champion of misery, the undisputed king of chaos, the year that truly earned the title, 536 AD. Now, if you're like most people, 536 AD probably doesn't ring a bell. You might recall the fall of Rome, the Black Death, maybe even the First World War. But 536? It's often overlooked, a shadowy figure lurking in the annals of history, precisely because it was so utterly, overwhelmingly terrible. It was a year that profoundly reshaped civilizations, yet its primary cause was an invisible, silent killer that plunged the world into an apocalyptic twilight. Our investigation into this annus horribilis begins not with kings or battles, but with something far more fundamental: the sun. Or more accurately, the lack of it. Imagine, if you will, waking up one morning and the sun, that dependable orb of warmth and light, is different, muted, dim, as if a permanent eclipse has taken hold, only without the dramatic unveiling. That, according to contemporary accounts, is precisely what happened in 536 AD. The Byzantine historian Procopius, no stranger to the dramatic, wrote with stark simplicity, "For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in eclipse, for the beams it shed were not clear, nor such as it is accustomed to shed." Think about that for a moment. Not for a day, not for a week, but for 18 months, the sun offered only a pale, ghostly imitation of its former self. It wasn't just Procopius either. Cassiodorus, an official in the Ostrogothic kingdom in Italy, lamented, "The sun, which is the king of all stars, is seen to have lost his wonted light and appears of a bluish color. We are amazed to see no shadows of our bodies at noon, to feel the mighty vigor of the sun's heat wasted into feebleness, and the phenomena which accompany an eclipse of the sun to be of indefatigable duration. Bluish color, no shadows at noon." This wasn't just bad weather. This was a fundamental shift in the very fabric of existence. The world, quite literally, went dark. So what caused this unprecedented global dimming? For centuries, historians puzzled over these accounts, often dismissing them as hyperbole or localized phenomena. But modern science, with its incredible ability to peer into the past, has given us an answer, and it's both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The culprit, my friends, was a massive volcanic eruption. Not just any eruption, mind you, but one so powerful, so immense, that it spewed tons of ash and aerosols high into the stratosphere, forming a vast, sun-blocking veil that encircled the entire northern hemisphere. Ice core samples, those frozen diaries of Earth's atmosphere, provide the smoking gun. Scientists drilling into glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica have found distinct layers of volcanic ash and sulfur aerosols precisely dated to 536 AD. And not just one eruption, but potentially a series of them, with a particularly massive one occurring in Iceland. Imagine the force required to launch enough material into the atmosphere to block out the sun for over a year. The immediate consequences were nothing short of catastrophic. Without sufficient sunlight, global temperatures plummeted. The year 536 AD saw the onset of the coldest decade in the past 2,000 years. Summer simply ceased to exist. In China, historical records speak of snow in August, something almost unimaginable. In Ireland, the annals mourn a failure of bread, meaning widespread famine. Crops failed en masse: wheat, barley, oats, the staples of most ancient diets, withered and died in the prolonged chill and gloom. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a death sentence for millions. When your entire agricultural system relies on the sun, and the sun decides to take an 18-month holiday, well, you can imagine the devastating effect on food supply. Famine, as history repeatedly shows us, rarely travels alone. It brings with it a host of grim companions: disease, social unrest, and a general breakdown of order. And 536 AD, already reeling from the solar dimming and subsequent famine, was about to welcome perhaps its most infamous guest: the plague. 2 years after the initial volcanic eruption, in 541 AD, a terrifying new disease erupted in the port city of Pelusium in Egypt. This was the first recorded appearance of the plague of Justinian, an outbreak of bubonic plague that would sweep across the Byzantine Empire and beyond, ultimately killing an estimated 25 to 50 million people, possibly up to half the population of Europe. While not directly caused by the volcanic winter of 536, the preceding years of famine and societal disruption undoubtedly created the perfect breeding ground for such a pandemic. Malnutrition weakens immune systems, mass displacement spreads disease, and a general sense of despair makes people more vulnerable. The environmental catastrophe had softened up humanity, leaving it ripe for the picking by Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the plague. The impact on the Byzantine Empire, then at the height of its power under Emperor Justinian, was immense. Justinian himself contracted the plague but miraculously recovered, though the empire was crippled. Cities were depopulated, trade routes disrupted, and the economy devastated. This wasn't just a health crisis, it was an existential threat to one of the most powerful empires of the age. But the misery wasn't confined to the Roman world. We see echoes of this dark year across the globe. In Scandinavia, archaeological evidence suggests a significant societal collapse around this time. Gold hoards, seemingly buried in haste and never recovered, indicate a period of extreme anxiety and disruption. Settlements were abandoned and the population sharply declined. Some historians even link the bleak imagery of Fimbul winter, the harsh, endless winter preceding Ragnarok in Norse mythology, to the collective trauma of this period. In Ireland, as mentioned, the failure of bread was a recurring theme in the annals for several years. Imagine a country whose cultural identity is so tied to its fertile green lands experiencing widespread starvation. It's a truly chilling thought. And what about further afield? While the direct evidence is harder to trace in some regions, the sheer scale of the volcanic eruptions suggests a global impact. Monsoon patterns would have been disrupted, leading to droughts or floods in various parts of Asia. The interconnectedness of ancient trade routes meant that even if a region wasn't directly hit by famine or plague, the collapse of distant economies would have sent shockwaves across the known world. So, how did humanity survive? How did civilizations recover from such an unprecedented series of blows? It's a testament to human resilience, certainly, but also a stark reminder of how fragile our existence truly is. The survivors adapted. They learned to farm in harsher conditions, they rebuilt their communities, and they slowly, painstakingly recovered. But the world that emerged from the shadow of 536 AD was undeniably different. The volcanic winter and the subsequent plague played a significant role in shaping the early medieval period. They contributed to the decline of the Byzantine Empire's reach in the West, paving the way for the rise of new kingdoms and new political structures. The massive population decline led to shifts in land ownership, labor availability, and even military strategies. Historians often debate the end of the classical world and the beginning of the Middle Ages. While there's no single definitive date, the events of 536 AD certainly mark a profound turning point. It wasn't just a political shift. It was an environmental and epidemiological catastrophe that deeply impacted every aspect of life, accelerating changes that were already underway and fundamentally altering the trajectory of human history. When we look back at 536 AD, it serves as a powerful, if grim, reminder of our place in the grand scheme of things. We often see ourselves as masters of our domain, capable of overcoming any challenge. But the Earth, with its immense geological forces, can humble us in an instant. An invisible veil of ash spewed from a distant volcano brought civilizations to their knees. It also highlights the incredible power of interconnectedness, not just of our global climate, but of human societies themselves. A volcanic eruption in one corner of the world could lead to famine in another, and a plague erupting on one continent could decimate populations across oceans. So, the next time you're having a particularly rough day, or even a rough year, remember 536 AD. It puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Because while we face our own challenges and uncertainties, at least the sun is shining brightly, and we generally know where our next meal is coming from. The story of 536 AD isn't just about disaster. It's about survival. It's about the deep, often invisible forces that shape our world and the indomitable spirit of humanity to endure even the darkest of times. It reminds us that history isn't just a collection of names and dates, but a living, breathing narrative of struggle, adaptation, and the relentless march forward. And perhaps, just perhaps, it makes us appreciate that little bit of sunshine a whole lot more. Until next time, keep digging into those dusty archives and never stop being curious about the utterly odd journey we call history.